There's some new polling from the Association for Canadian Studies. Maybe you've heard a bit about it, right? It talked a bit about the two solitudes and how Francos and Anglos view their attachment to Quebec and Canada. But you know what? That wasn't the interesting part of the polling. The interesting stuff came when the Association for Canadian Studies asked Quebecers about secularism and laïcité and how they viewed certain religious symbols. Some of the figures were quite astounding. Let me tell you something, as someone that's very much in favor of laïcité and our Quebec version of secularism, Anglos continue to jump on board the laïcité train. Now, 60% of Francophones support that notion. Anglophones now, it's up to 33.3%. That figure is on the rise. And there's some other things that are very interesting when it comes to how Quebecers, Anglo and Franco, view religious symbols. Jack Jedwab is on the line, president of the Association for Canadian Studies. Jack, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Elias.
So let's talk about the things, and I've heard you remark on this too. There was some data that you said, hey, we got to check this again, and I wonder when you do polling, when you see numbers that go against maybe your preconceived notions, what do you do to verify that the numbers are correct?
I keep doing the analysis with the data just to double check and sometimes triple check when something doesn't seem to be in line with what I've seen in previous surveys. So, and what surprised me most in this particular survey, at least in terms of the whole laïcité, secularism conversation, was when looking at specific religious symbols, Anglophones said they responded more negatively when asked about hijabs than positively, and that seemed to go against what I'd seen in previous surveys. Now, to be fair, Francophones, 61% had a negative response to hearing about hijabs. The accumulation of the being very and somewhat negative, and 16% were positive, and Anglophones were more divided when they heard hijabs, 41% negative, 37% positive. But the fact is, it's more negative than positive when it came to that religious symbol, which wasn't the case for any other religious symbols. So it leads me to conclude that more education needs to be done with respect to that particular issue, and we shouldn't simply think it's the majority group that feels that particular negativity.
So do you have any indications on why the movement of numbers? Like, to me, it's pretty simple. For at least one part of this, I think we're all watching what's happening in Iran. And people want to, are rightfully supporting the women in Iran, and they're asking a lot of questions about what happens outside of Iran too. And I wonder if that's moved the needle. Do you have any indication why you're seeing that movement?
No, I'm going to have to probe it further. That may be part of the explanation, and there are ways of further probing these things. Because what I'll do is come back with the question again, and then ask you if you've said you have a negative view around a particular religious symbol, to share in one sentence why that's the case. And so then I can get sort of now a deeper understanding by looking at what explanations people are giving and sort of unpacking that data as to what's driving this type of sentiment.
I know from a lot of people that are against the Quebec notion of laïcité, and boy, we hear it on this station from a lot of people. I know a lot of people say, this is all about one particular religion, one particular religious symbol. And then you have some very interesting data about how Francophones view the crucifix. Why don't you tell us about what you discovered there, other religious symbols?
Yeah, there's been some changes in that area as well. Generally, what we've noticed in previous surveys is that the negative view around hijabs really stood out relative to other religious symbols, which didn't receive the same degree of negative type of reaction. So that crosses and crucifixes were viewed by Francophones more positively than negatively. But in this survey, they actually view these other religious symbols more negatively than they do positively, which is a bit of a reversal from what we've seen in previous surveys. So I'm going to have to come back with another survey to see if this stays consistent, because it's also possible it's sort of like a rogue poll. These things happen. But it could be there's some trending in that direction. The messaging is very important, and policymakers have been pounding away at the message that, religion has a negative effect on Quebecers. And historically, there's been, of course, a lot of discussion about how Catholicism has had a detrimental effect on the progress of Quebec and Francophone society in particular. But that's not necessarily the way in which the polls have shaken out, if you'd like. in terms of reaction to Christian religious symbols. This one seems to be a bit different from what I've seen previously.
With Jack Jedwab from the Association for Canadian Studies. So, Jack, when you do polling like this, I know sometimes it's framed, okay, the two solitudes here. But maybe we could talk about the things that really do unite us, the things where Anglo-Franco doesn't matter, where we think the same way or we're on the same page opinion-wise.
Yeah. Healthcare is an issue where we're pretty much on the same page. There's a strong consensus and a lot of support for universal healthcare as a principle amongst both Francophones and Anglophones. Things like bilingualism, actually, even though the intensity to which people are attached to bilingualism, there seems to be a fairly strong consensus around the value assigned to bilingualism and multiculturalism as well. There's a bit more of a consensus. Again, a lot of this comes down to how people define these concepts, and so Francophones may define certain concepts differently than Anglophones do, which is something that we're also kind of looking at. So if you look at getting back to the original discussion, laïcité and secularism, people who are English-speaking may understand the term secularism differently from the way Francophones interpret laïcité, because you'll hear the Premier always associate laïcité or columnists at some newspaper that, like the Journal de Montréal, I won't mention the name of the columnists, who like to equate laïcité with Bill 21 all the time. Laïcité means Bill 21. But, laïcité is a broader concept. There's different definition of what it means in France. There's a different definition in the United States of what secularism and separation of church and state mean. So sometimes it becomes important to try to reconcile people's diverging understandings of what these terms mean and the way in which they get applied by politicians.
Jack, keep crunching those numbers. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Good. Thank you, Elias.
That's Jack Jedwab, president of the Association for Canadian Studies.